Hello and welcome to Transforming Your Company's Data Analytics, Championing the Digital Enterprise Certification Program. We're in our third course, Making Evidence-Based Strategic Decisions, and in week 2, we're taking a look at data-enabled decision-making. In our first module, we're going to talk about what is good decision-making.
Now, philosophical traditions from all around the world and from all times have looked at what makes a good decision. But we really don't want to take that much time to talk about effective decision making. So let's talk about effective decision making in the modern era. And I like to point to Peter Drucker's 1967 article about what is the effective decision. And in this, he talks about the first step you need to do is classify the problem. What kind of problem are we working with? Is it a problem in the workplace? Is it a problem in the personal life? What exactly are we confronting here? And once we understand the area of the problem, we want to define the problem. And he talks about that the best way to solve a problem is to really define the problem thoroughly. It's almost the idea here that the better you define the problem, the closer you are to a solution. And he talks about how this works because when you really take the time to understand fully what that problem is, you're almost specifying the answer to the problem. In other words, as you get better and more detailed about the problem you're trying to work with, you can see the outlines of the answer that you are going to have. And then he talks about deciding what is right. So once you've got an idea about the answer to the problem and how you're going to confront this problem, you need to think about various solutions. And you want to make sure that you have the right solution. And the right solution is not just what solves the problem, but is also right for society as a whole. So for example, when we talked about competition, we have many ways of dealing with competitors. Now, some ways that we can deal with competitors, like burning down their factories or assassinating their board, is clearly illegal, immoral, and we really shouldn't do that. When we want to compete in a free and fair market, we want to do it in the right way. We want to make sure that we're competing fairly and within rules and regulations. And then we're not doing things like deceiving consumers or taking unfair advantage of our competitors. And once you've got the answer to this problem that you have, you want to build an action into carrying out the decision. So you've got an answer, now you know how to make the decision about that problem, and you want to take action based on the decision you make. Because you may solve the problem, you may have a good answer, but if you're not taking any action, you might as well not even try to bother solving the problem. I mean, I've worked in government and I've had a couple of times here where someone has defined a problem. We did a great study on it. We produced a report that suggests a decision for a decision maker to make. They take that report, thank us for it, and put it on the shelf. And no decision is made, no action is taken. It was a waste of our time and effort. So you want to make sure you have some action into carrying out that decision. And once you do that decision and you carry out that action, you want to be able to measure it. Was it a valid and effective decision? Was it a valid and effective action? And that'll help you in the future when you have similar problems, understand how to best solve those problems based on the track record of the actions and decisions you took. So in some cases, you may never want to do that action again. In other cases, you may want to replicate that action. So we've talked a lot about the theory of decision making and how to make good decisions. Let's see one in action here with a classic case study of Steve Jobs' actions that he took and the decisions he made when he returned to Apple in 1997. Now, Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997 to a company where the brand was under fire and it was losing its place in the marketplace. And one reason that he found was it had a confusing product line. They had all kinds of different computers for business people and for consumers, and some of these systems were competing with each other. And these were spread out over several different markets, and in some cases, these markets were ill-defined. You really didn't know who this was supposed to appeal to and why you had this computer system built for these people that you really couldn't define. So Steve Jobs asked a really good question that got at the heart of what was the problem. What was Apple good at? What was Apple known for? And how can it regain what it was known for? So that's a great question and a great way to define the problem so that you can focus on how to solve that problem. So the first thing that Steve Jobs did was cut the product line by 70%. He killed off a lot of products, and in the process here, a lot of folks lost their jobs, a lot of managers were kicked out of their jobs. But what he did is he took Apple and he said, we're going to focus on what makes Apple unique, and we're going to focus on the markets that are going to help us achieve and build. So he said, we're going to have 4 products for 2 markets, consumer and professional. So you're going to have a desktop and a laptop for these 2 markets. So for the professional, you had the Power Macintosh G3 desktop and the PowerBook G3 portable. For the consumer, you had the iMac desktop and the iBook portable computer. And just a little side note here, the reason he called them the iMac and iBook is he wanted the I to signify the internet and to take advantage of the rapidly growing commercial internet and to show that Apple was back and that it was a part of this new revolution in computing, the internet. So this is a great example of how a good decision was made by really looking at the problem here and succinctly defining the problem. What was Apple good at? And then from that, we could take actions and we can make good decisions to bring back Apple's brand and allow it to become a competitive company again. Nowadays, we have a great decision model that has some echoes of Peter Drucker's steps that we were talking about. We had the lean startup model. And the first part of the model is ideate. In other words, we take a leap of faith out here. We take a look at our market. We do a little market research. We think about what would the consumers want, and we build something. And we build a minimum viable product. We don't build the whole product at once, but we build a minimum viable product so that we can measure how the consumers react to it, how the market reacts to it, and gather insights. That's our data. And once we get that data, we can then learn from that data and we can pivot. So in other words, we can take a look, okay, we have this minimum viable product based on what we think the consumers want, and we've done a little bit of research, so we got a good idea what the consumers want, but we really don't know until they actually have the product in their hands and they're working with it and they're giving us real-time reactions to that product. And from that, we can learn, okay, do we continue with this? Or do we build something entirely new? Or do we take a feature of the product and we enhance that part? So with this decision making, you're putting out a prototype out there, that minimum viable product, you're getting data on that, you're learning from that, and you decide, well, should we go through this loop again? Are there things that we need to gather more data from? And are there things that we need to do to refine it? And with many companies, they only go through this loop constantly until they arrive at a good product that'll sell for a while in the marketplace until they decide, well, we need to introduce new products and services. So that's the whole idea here behind making good decisions. Really defining what the problem is, and you want to define this from the customer's perspective, building a product that you think will meet the customer's needs, getting it into the hands of the customer so they can tell you if it does meet their needs, and then learning from how the customers react to that product to refine that product or to build something entirely new.
I hope you've enjoyed Module 1 and learning more about what makes a good decision.